Baruch
Atah
Adonai Eloheinu
melech haolam asher kiddushanu mitzvotanu la'asot v'divrei Torah.
Praise to you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who has made us holy with your commandments and commanded us to busy ourselves with the words of Torah. And with that, Brenda, would you read our story of Judah and Tamar in 1 foot, please?
Sure will. After Joseph was sold to the Ishmaelites, Judah separates from his brothers and gets married. The story explains what happens to Judah's daughter-in-law. Act 1.
All right, Act 1. Here we go. Charles, would you read this, please?
About the time Judah left his brothers and camped near a certain Adullamite whose name was Hira. There Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua, and he took her into his household as wife and cohabitated with her. She conceived and bore a son, and he named him Er.
Mm-hmm.
She conceived again and bore a son and named him Onan. Once again, she bore a son and named him Shelah. He was at Shezib when she bore him. Judah got a wife for Er, his firstborn. Her name was Tamar. But Er, Judah's firstborn, was displeasing to Hashem, and Hashem took his life. Then Judah said to Onan, join your brother's wife and do your duty by her as a brother-in-law and provide offspring for your brother. But Onan, knowing that the offspring would not count as his, let the semen go to waste whenever he joined with his brother's wife, so as not to provide offspring for his brother. What he did was displeasing to Hashem, and he took his life also. Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, stay as a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up, for he thought he too might die like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's house.
Okay, thank you. Context.
This happens after Joseph gets sold to the Ishmaelites by his brothers, and the brothers tell Jacob that his son has died. The Midrash wonders why the story is put here and concludes that Judah is going to find out what it's like to have a child die, just like he inflicted that pain on Jacob. Okay. Note that Judah marries the daughter of Shua. Shua is not the name of his wife. The Midrash names Judah's wife Aliyah. Tamar means date palm, which flowers in the desert and has fruit that is super sweet. The idea of an unmarried brother marrying his deceased brother's wife is called jibum, or levirate marriage, and both ensures that the deceased has a continuing lineage and also that the widow stays part of the clan. Levirate marriage only applies if the deceased brother did not already have a child. Later in the Torah, there was a way to refuse to do levirate marriage, but that doesn't seem to have been an option here. Okay, at what points could this part of the story have turned out differently?
Thank you. All right.
Wow. Yeah.
I guess one way is that Onan could have just done what he was supposed to do. He could just fulfilled his obligation rather simply, and that would make all of this very different as a storyline. because we're not even told really anything about Onan as a person. Who knows what kind of story we could have gotten, what kind of description of a person he could have been if, you know, he was alive to, I guess, have one for us to see. But yeah, that's the first thing that stood out to me.
I guess going back to the beginning of the story, the brothers could have not sold Joseph. And then Judah wouldn't have had to have left.
You know, who knows?
Judah could have not married this Canaanite woman because he was already married.
I don't know if he was married.
No? I thought, okay. Sorry.
But it's true. He could have married someone else, and then the story might have turned out differently.
Yeah.
Very quickly, he could have found someone, right?
We don't know if Tamar and Shelah ever got together.
Hmm.
No, Shelah was too young.
Read on and you'll see.
Yeah, he was too young at the time.
We don't know what it was that Aaron did that was displeasing, David.
No, although I have an appendix where the Midrash and the rabbis
Talk
of
about
the
it.
past give thoughts on the matter.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, if Judah wouldn't have been going off with this other gentleman, Hira, and apparently he was friends with him, they went around, then maybe he would have met somebody else, or he would have found a wife within his own clan or his own family rather than, or some relative, shall I say, not a clan, but some relatives such as his forefathers had done, rather than go off with this particular Dulamite to stray after the daughters of other people, shall we say. It all starts there. He left his brothers and he camped near this other person. And there he saw the daughter of a certain person, a certain Shua. That's what happens when you go on this bachelor, bar crawl, shall we say. You go around, you never know what's going to happen. You have one or two drinks more than you really should, and not from my own particular experience. I was never good at drinking that much. I had too much wine once or twice in Chile with some friends, and that was enough. So I learned to be moderate at my imbibing. But there were other folks who weren't.
Oh,
Right there.
Yes. Mina points out in the chat, because Joseph was sold, we have Passover. If he hadn't been sold, we wouldn't have had the Exodus, and we would have had some. And but I'm going to add to what Mina wrote is we would have had some Torah about every 4 months, because we would have finished the Bible instead of having to do the other 4 chapters.
that's a thought.
David, I looked up the meaning of er,
Mm-hmm.
and it means observant in Hebrew, if that's the correct definition.
Quite possible.
Pardon?
Mhm. Yeah.
So I'm thinking that he wasn't observant.
Yeah.
Otherwise, God wouldn't have taken his life.
Right. That sounds reasonable.
That makes sense. All right.
Following that line of logic, then his other brother also was misbehaving in the sense that he was not fulfilling his duty, and he was wasting his seed, and he also was punished.
David, are the Orthodox still practicing that today? Because there was a movie made way back in the 70s in Israel called I Love You, Rosa, which was exactly about this problem.
I don't know how much levirate marriage is still in practice today, but I will look into it and send out what I can find.
It's a wonderful movie if you can find it on Netflix. It's about the surviving brother is 11 years old.
What's the name of the movie?
I Love You, Rosa.
Oh, and then I didn't see that one. That sounds good.
I have
I think that came out some time ago, did it not?
Yeah, in the
Or is it-
70s.
Yes, I think I vaguely recall it. Yeah.
David, I have two questions about this.
Yes.
If it's possible. So my first question then, so this whole event is pre-Torah at Sinai. So does this mean that is this like a command that would also apply to Noahides? Like, would this have applied for them, or is this like, I guess within the timeline or chronology, is this a thing that they're optionally doing because Torah hasn't been given yet? Or is like
this
okay.
This is not for Noahides. This is a family custom that becomes
a law later.
on. That it's a family custom within Jacob's family that becomes then an Israelite thing to do.
Oh, okay. And I guess my second question then would be, so what is, I guess, the actual, is there only a single prohibition derived from this? Are there multiple prohibitions derived from this? Like what is actually derived from here? I guess if it's taken primarily as legal material by the sages.
Yeah. It is the thing that is derived from here is that actually, I will put this in a follow-up email because by the time I formulate my thoughts on it, we could have answered 3 more questions. But I will get to that.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
It's a good question.
Because I've read a little bit about this peripherally, and it seems to be I'm not sure really. So I just was curious your thoughts. Thank you.
Yep.
I might suggest that the Yibum, the custom is presented here as if it was very important thing you had to do, not as a, if I could say it this way, a mere custom, because it says Hashem punished the son who shirked the duty, and so on. And so I don't know. I mean, when this story was written, it may be that no one was thinking about how this would be explained in context of some set of rules for a people. But it's clear that there's a judgment, is there not? And the consequences are severe.
Yes. So to clarify what I was saying earlier, it is something that God seems to think ought to happen. The question that Gabriel was asking was whether this was incumbent on Noahides, meaning non-Jews who adhere to some basic biblical rules, of which there are 7 laws, and I don't think levirate marriage is one of the 7. So yes, this is something that's important to God, but the question is who God thinks it's really important to be doing this. Because there are other things where God's like, this is really important for you Jews to be doing, but God doesn't go about smiting everybody if they pick up sticks on Shabbat, presumably. So it's a matter of for whom, not how important, I guess. Thank you for that note of clarification, Phil. All right. Question 2. Since the text is silent on this, make up a midrash. Make up your own story. What might Er have done that was displeasing to God?
Well, Morris said he wasn't observant.
Okay. Observant of what?
Whatever was the the religion of the day.
All right. Great, we have a midrash. Other midrashim.
Well, he could have begged God for forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
prayed on it.
Mm-hmm.
He might have been displeased with Tamar as his wife.
Mm. God does say to Abraham, listen to your wife.
Perhaps he was abusive to Tamar.
Mm.
Mm.
Maybe.
All good possibilities. Other thoughts? Just to be clear, the rules of Midrash are that if you are making up a story about a story within the Torah, nearly everything is okay as long as it doesn't contradict another detail that is given in the text. And since we have practically no details in the text about this little story, there's a lot of room for making up your own interpretations.
Maybe Er was abusive to Tamar, and God didn't like it, and he struck him dead. And Onan said, "I don't want to preserve his line because of who he was and what he did." And so he was trying to be good as opposed to being disobedient. But that didn't matter because the rules are the rules, and he strayed over the line.
Great. There's a midrash that takes in both Er and Onan. All right, next question. How might Tamar have felt about Onan's refusal to give her a child that would be considered his brother's lineage?
Well, she was pretty upset about it, that he didn't fulfill his obligation.
Hmm.
Maybe she thought it was her fault that Anan wouldn't give her a child because he wasn't interested in her, wasn't attracted to her. And she blamed herself for that.
Hmm.
David, could you scroll down a little bit so we could? Thank you.
Yep.
She may have been upset and angry that, she's just a pawn in all this. And, she didn't really want to go to her father's house, but she didn't have a choice. She can't move on with her life.
That's true. All right. So we got an answer to this already, but I'll pose the question and see what other thoughts there are. Why might Onan have not wanted to give a child to his brother's lineage?
I would imagine it has to do with inheritance.
Because without heir, Onan becomes the oldest.
Yeah.
But if heir has an heir, no pun intended,
Yeah.
then
Goes to the heir.
Yes.
Would he be responsible for supporting the son?
That's a good question. Probably.
But in the future, he could look forward to having the son support him in his old age. So
What
that's
if
what
the
it,
son is not a son-in-law, but a daughter?
At this point, daughters can't inherit.
I'm lost.
Does Levirate marriage require only one child?
Yeah. One child, the first child gets counted to your brother's lineage, and the rest of the kids count as yours. So, for practical purposes, if Onan had multiple children with Tamar, he would have been their father and would have had all the joys and oys that entails. But then for things like clans and family lineage, when thinking about marriage, the first child would have been considered part of his brother's line. And for inheritance purposes from Judah, the first kid would have been considered from heir's line. And if it was a male, then would have gotten that inheritance.
Could Onan have thought that if he's not able to have any more children, then he would be considered childless and not fulfilling the commandment to be fruitful and multiply?
Entirely possible. And while I don't know for sure, I could imagine a situation where if Onan has a child with Tamar, and that child is counted as heir's child, but then Onan dies, then Shelah would have been obligated to marry Tamar and provide a kid for Onan's lineage. Kind of like when you have to carry ones in 3-digit subtraction.
And what happens if the brother who dies childless has more than one wife?
I don't know for sure, but the next brother might end up being married to both of them, thus doubling the chances of having a kid. I will also say that there's a whole tractate of the Talmud devoted to this question of levirate marriage. It's called Yivamot, from Yibum, and it dives into all the intricacies that you guys are starting to tease out. So, well, I don't know if this is of much practical use these days. It is very good for keeping the brain sharp to try to puzzle things out by digging into Yivamot. Even if you just do the Mishnah, there's still plenty there to keep one busy. All right, last question for this act. Should Judah have given his youngest son to Tamar as a spouse? And if he didn't want to, what could he have done instead?
Well, we know eventually what he did.
Yes, but let's keep it to our yes, and let's stay in Act 1 for now.
Okay.
I thought that he couldn't do it because Sella was too young.
He does say that. And we have no evidence to the contrary to contradict him. However, it seems that if he's concerned that he might die like his brothers, that he may not be intending on actually giving Shelah as a spouse when Shelah gets older. So the question is, let's take Judah at face value. When Shelah gets older, should Judah give Shelah as a spouse to Tamar?
It'd be too risky. With the history, he would be worried that Shelah might die as well.
Mm-hmm. And so then if he doesn't want to, what should he do instead with Tamar?
So we shouldn't go into what he actually does then.
No, we're limited to the current text and what he should do if he doesn't want to give Shelah as a spouse.
Okay.
Did they have chalitza in those days where?
No.
Oh, okay.
Did he have the authority to marry her off to some stranger?
Yeah, he would have had the authority as her father-in-law to say, you are Well, I don't know if he would have had the authority to marry her to someone else, but he would have had the authority to free her from being constrained to only marrying his sons. He could say, you are released from this obligation. You can go find a partner somewhere else.
But is the obligation hers or is it Judah's?
The obligation for what?
For having her marry his next son. I thought that was Judah's obligation, or
It
actually
is.
the brother's obligation. And Judah wouldn't have any authority to cancel that.
It's the brother's obligation once it becomes of marriageable age. And until such time, Judah gets to make the call on what his minor son is doing.
David, I'm thinking that it seems that Judah is kind of blaming Tamar for what happened to his sons.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not looking at his own responsibility. That he raised two sons that were maybe not very good.
Mm.
And rather than Tamar displeasing them, maybe it was them, that they were the people that were displeasing. Obviously, they were to God, so.
Yep.
Or, didn't we read earlier that Judah was, in a way, being punished by God because of what he tried to do to Joseph?
That is a rabbinic interpretation of it. Yes.
But essentially, Tamar was being punished as well.
Yes. She is a passive pawn in this family drama.
If God took the life of Judah's sons, he must have done something horrible, rather than just putting a certain punishment on them, like giving them leprosy or something. But killing them is a big deal. So what they must have done must have been a big deal. So Tamar probably didn't really love these young men at all. They don't seem very lovable. And yet she's stuck in this role. And he's kind of holding on to her, keeping her for something else in his thoughts. So Tamar went to live in her father's house. He could have had her stay at his house. You just stay here until solar goes up, and that would imply possibly a union between Shelah and Tamar. But he doesn't do that. He sends her off to her father's house. So that's going to keep her available for whatever Judah has in mind.
Yep. All right. Let's see what happens in Act 2. Norma, would you read this act, please?
Sure. A long time afterwards, Shua's daughter, the wife of Judah, died. When his period of mourning was over, Judah went up to Timnah of his sheep herders, together with his friend Hira, the Adulamite. And Tamar was told, your father-in-law is coming up to Timnah for the sheep shearing. So she took off her widow's garb, covered her face with a veil, and wrapping herself up, sat down at the entrance to Enaim, or at Petach Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah, for she saw that Shelah was grown up, yet she had been not given to him as wife. When Judah saw her, he took her for a harlot, for she had covered her face. So he turned aside to her by the road and said, "Here, let me sleep with you." For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. "What?" she asked. "Will you pay for sleeping with me?" He replied, "I will send a kid from my flock." But she said, "You must put it up." I can't see anymore.
Yep. Hold on. All right, there we go.
But she said, "You must leave a pledge until you have sent it." And he said, "What pledge shall I give you?" She replied, "Your seal and cord and the staff which you carry." So he gave them to her and slept with her, and she conceived by him. Then she went on her way. She took off her veil and again put on her widow's garb. Judah sent the kid by his friend, the Adulamite, to redeem the pledge from the woman, but he could not find her. He inquired of the council of that locale, "Where is the prostitute, the one at Enaim by the road?" But they said, "There has been no prostitute here." So he returned to Judah and said, "I could not find her. Moreover, the local council said, there has been no prostitute here." Judah said, "Let her keep them, lest we become a laughing stock. I did send her this kid, but you did not find her."
Okay.
Context. At this point in the story, Tamar is associated with the death of two husbands. She has no spouse and no children, and she can't remarry because she's supposed to be waiting for Shelah to be given to her in marriage. A seal and cord was a hard, hollow cylinder that people wore around their neck with a unique design on it. It functioned like a signature. Walking sticks also had unique markings or additions to them. These all have been found by archaeologists in the Near East. The plot thickens.
All right. At what points could this part of the story have turned out differently?
Well, he could have recognized her from the get-go.
Yeah, right.
Well, he went ahead and did the same thing he did the first time. The other time he went off with his friend, the same guy, sheep shearing, and he's up to these activities with women. That's the first thing he does. He runs across this woman saying, "Hey," he doesn't think about looking for someone else to take, as a wife. He just walks down the road and sees this woman in a veil, and he's off to have fun with his friend and sheep shearing. So what can I say? If he wouldn't have done that the second time, then who knows how the story would have ended, and how does it end?
We'll find out in Act 3.
Yeah.
Well, also, since she saw Shelah and he was grown up, and yet, Judah did not call her to wed him. So I would think she'd be pretty mad.
I find it unusual that Judah did not know her. She lived with him for years and in his house. And if nothing else, when she talks, "What will you come to sleeping with me?" surely he would have recognized her voice, because even if he couldn't see her face. It just makes no sense.
Right, that is an inconsistency, that he didn't recognize her, yet here he was intimate with her, and he should have recognized her, but in this story he doesn't.
All right.
Okay.
Although all depends how much he drank. If he did.
He did something he shouldn't have.
All right, I'm going to combine questions 2 and 3, and you can respond to which either one you want. Tamar, like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Hannah, has no child, particularly not one connected with her first husband. What were her options? And avoiding the Sarah route of resignation, the Rebecca route of delegation of prayer, in her case to Isaac, the Rachel route of despair, and the Hannah route of prayer, Tamar takes action. How might she have been feeling before Judah encountered her?
Well, I would think she was very frustrated living in her father's home when here she was married before, and she didn't really have options of meeting new men. So it would be frustration. And then she took a very dramatic route to get her to her end, different means to her end.
And Judah was not allowing his third son to fulfill the obligation. So she goes to to Judah to have the obligation fulfilled or to be released. Then she had the daring to the initiative to do it. But you notice someone let her know. The Shua wasn't just let her know he's on the way. Why would she tell him that? So she knew where to find him. So if Tamar had not been informed, that might have changed the story. So I'll ask a question. Why do you think the folks let Tamar know that Judah was on the road to the shearing?
Yeah, we're not told who told. We are not told who told Tamar this.
Maybe she was getting even with him for what she felt he did to her unjustly, making her live with him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she was actually sent back to her community to live with her father. So she was in another neighborhood. So yes, she could have
Just angry, right?
Yeah, so she's frustrated and angry because maybe she wanted to meet other men to have babies with or get married, and being that she was a widow, maybe also they felt that she was not marriageable once she already was married and widowed.
Do the kids read this story, David?
Oh no.
Okay. Okay.
All right, let's go into Act 3. Gary, would you read this, please?
Okay. About 3 months later, Judah was told, your daughter-in-law, Tamar, has played the harlot. In fact, she is pregnant from harlotry. Bring her out, said Judah. She should be burned. As she was being brought out, she sent this message to her father-in-law. It's by a man to whom these belong that I'm pregnant. And she added, examine these, whose seal and cord and staff are these. Judah recognized them and said, she is more in the right than I, inasmuch as I did not give her to my son Shelah. And he was not intimate with her again. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twins in her womb. While she was in labor, one of them put out a hand, and the midwife tied a crimson thread on that hand to signify this one came out first. But just then it drew back its hand, and it came out, out came its brother. And she said, what a breach you have made of for yourself. So he was named Perez. Afterward, his brother came out, on whose hand was the crimson thread. he was named Zerah.
Okay, context, please.
Although Shelah doesn't get married to Tamar, one of Judah's goals, he must have gotten married because he is recorded as having a clan of descendants in Numbers 26-22. Also because Perez becomes a key figure, he gets a name explanation. Though Zerah means brightness, and that might refer to the crimson thread.
Wow.
All right, thank you. At what points could this part of the story have turned out differently?
She might have not had twins.
That's true.
Good Naomi.
I suppose he could have decided to marry her and keep her as his wife.
The shocking thing to me is, even on rereading many times, he says alter point A has two Hebrew verbs. He says, take her out to be burned. It's just like two words. So he's so quick to make that terrible judgment. And then when he's shown the evidence, he's so forthright. It's really quite a story there. Because he not only says she's more in the right, he admits that it's his fault, the underlying wrong, all of that. I'm afraid I haven't answered your question, but that's all I wanted to say.
Suppose it would have been more interesting if he really did continue to have children with her, because here he lost his first two sons, and then she would be able to supply more children for him.
Maybe.
And you know, then of course they would have just been half brothers with Shelah, and then they would have been one big happy family. But he decided not to have children with her further.
But she did give him back two sons.
Yeah, she could have had more.
Yeah.
Yeah, she had the two two twins to replace the ones that he lost.
Right.
But she did replace the ones that were lost.
Right.
It just seems a little strange, though, that a hand came out and then they turned around and then the other one came out first. Medically, I don't know how that would be.
Right. Not
A little far-fetched.
correct.
In those days.
I mean, it was breach maybe, but I don't know. It was strange.
If I might, I forgot my point. The storytelling is so wonderful. I forgot my point, which was he said take her out to be to be burned, and they could have done that had she not had and that's the most frightful thing.
Well, she wouldn't have allowed. She wouldn't have allowed it. She would have presented the evidence to show that that she was not a harlot.
You're saying that she was a person who took the initiative, and she would have said it anyhow, but she did say it. Yeah, I think that's right.
Right, because when she heard that he'll be crossing that area, so she went out to basically seduce him. I mean, he didn't have to respond to her on the corner there. He could have said, "Oh, hello, lovely lady," and just kept walking. But basically, she must have seduced him with the intention of getting pregnant. And of course, she chose him, not just some stranger, not just another man in her neighborhood.
All right, I'm going to point out the epilogue to the story, which is from the book of Ruth. In the book of Ruth, we see the line of Perez. So 10 generations from Perez, who was Tamar's son, we get to David via Boaz, who marries Ruth. And because of Tamar's actions, we get David, and David becomes the ancestor of the Messiah. Or we are told that David will be the ancestor of the Messiah. So Tamar and Ruth is active in determining her fate, and her boldness is rewarded. So with that, I'm going to stop the share.